Today's story was written by Reddit user Vaughn1919. It had been a few days since the last of the interviews. They had finally been permitted to utilise the ship's exercise room, though only under armed guard. Though through it all, she could feel a conflict growing inside her. Ever since she was just a hatchling, she had been taught that humans were vile and were an evil race that had to be enslaved in order to stop their genocidal and expansionist ways. Now, however, she was unsure.
Alright class, today we will finally learn about the Sol Coalition War, my teacher declared.
The class instantly fell silent as per regulation. Lower classes were not taught about the war until they reached the proper age, so to say that we were all eager would be an understatement.
To begin, I should explain why humanity was even allowed to become a threat in the first place. You see, when the Coalition first came into contact with the Empire of Sol, we were in a major crisis. We were facing incursions from an intergalactic devouring swarm, and the Empire of Sol was seen as a necessary evil. At the time, we were correct. Human forces, different technology, and ingenuity showed itself to be the tipping point. That war came to an end when a human general named Aaron Ricker led a suicide mission to kill the swarm's hive queen, and succeeded. My teacher finished his explanation, eyeing the class to ensure that everyone had listened. I saw a hand raise out of the corner of my eye. My teacher nodded towards a student. "Is that why there is a statue of 5 armed humans in front of the Coalition headquarters?" the student asked. Yes, it was heavily debated whether or not the statue should be removed after the Sol Coalition War, but after evidence was found that Aaron and his troops were sent for trying to warn us about their empire's later plans, it was decided to keep it, our teacher explained. Now, on to the reason for the Sol Coalition War. The Sol Empire had declared war upon the Trilax for supposedly attacking a mining colony. However, when the Coalition requested to send an impartial investigation team, the humans refused and attacked a major Trilaxian colony, killing everyone and everything on the planet. Quickly, we realized that the humans were lying and attempting to violently expand. Unfortunately, the Trilaxians were wiped out before our armada could launch a counterattack, our teacher explained with a heavy sigh. Once our armada was ready, however, we immediately attacked Sol and decimated their fleet when they returned from Trilax Prime. After that, we launched our ground invasion, capturing their emperor and the nobility. However, as we began enslaving them, as was the punishment for such action, many escaped with the help of a human warship and transport fleet. To this day, they attempt to harass the Coalition, but are easily driven off. Our teacher finished with a sip of his gron. Now, however, Tryla was noticing a distinctive lack of senseless murder, and indeed, a great deal of restraint from those who are visibly angered by their presence. Now things were making less and less sense. She huffed and began her run on the treadmill. Grinnock continued his steady breathing as he lifted the heavy weights again. This situation was bringing up many memories, all of the war and none that he liked. Watching his clanmates get obliterated in space and in the atmosphere of Sol 3. Certainly not the campaign against the Trilax, who had sided with the United Nations of Sol in their war of aggression against the Coalition. "We've just lost wings 7, 3, 9 and 4, I declared, terrified. "Keep your head, wing 5. We put down the Trilaxian traitors, and we'll put down these upstarts as well,"
Wing Leader declared to me. We were the last of our wing and had just chased 2 human Drake fighters into the atmosphere of Sol 3. The moment we did, however, we were met with intense and accurate ground fire. We continued to pursue the Drakes through the skies, narrowly dodging incoming ground fire. We followed them through a cloud, but when we came through the other side, there was only one. I checked my aft camera and saw the Drake appear behind me.
"Wing 5, break off to the left and draw that one away. Once I finish this one, I will return and destroy that one,"
my wing leader ordered. I hesitated for a moment. I was very terrified of the thought of being chased,
but orders were orders. "Copy, wing leader," I declared with false stoicism and bravado. I broke off and took some precautionary evasive manoeuvres, but noticed a distinctive lack of enemy fire. I glanced back at the aft camera and noticed, to my horror, that the Drake was chasing my wing leader. Before I could turn back to assist, I saw my wing leader's fighter turn into a bright blue fireball. Now I was alone. I took further evasive actions as the Drakes turned their attention towards me. I knew that I wouldn't survive trying to dodge their fire and the ground fire, so I tried to make for space again. At least there I could get some help. As I tried, however, I heard the alarm. I knew that this was the end, because their missiles never missed. Slamming my hand on the eject button, my cockpit broke off and rapidly fell towards the ground, its thrusters damaged by the explosion of my fighter. I awoke on a human bed with bandages wrapped around my right arm, legs, and head. They had treated my wounds. Why? "Ah, you're finally awake. I am Dr. Lisa Jones. I wanted to ensure that you were awake before I left. You have been unconscious for about 5 days. At first, we weren't sure if you would wake up," the human doctor, Lisa, said before turning to leave. I grabbed her arm lightly, stopping her. "Why?" I asked with a rasp. She removed my grip gently and gave a faint smile. "Because of our rules of war and what we do, we know many of you are here under false pretenses, and we don't hold it against you. Only your leaders," she said before leaving. I looked around and saw a few other wounded coalition troops and began to wonder. Later that day we were liberated by our ground forces. Grinnak grunted as he finished his last rep. He sat up and repressed a sigh. He felt guilt over what he had done. Once he discovered that they were being sent to find and ambush the Defiance, he had leaked the information to a human slave, and ensured that the humans were ready. He caused the deaths of many of his own crew, and for that he felt guilty and ashamed. But he had to repay the humans for the kindness that they showed him and others, even at the end. Dr. Whitkins ate his food quietly in the mess hall. He had felt a great deal of confliction with the arrival of the prisoners. He was just a boy when the Coalition attacked Earth, but he remembered everything, especially the last time he saw his father. "Now listen, Henry, you be good for your grandpa, alright?" my father said calmly. I wiped more tears from my eyes. "But Dad, why can't you come with us? I don't want to lose you like Mum," I cried. My father knelt down and pulled me into a tight embrace. "Son, you will never truly lose us. We will always be with you, in your heart and mind," he said in a somber tone. My father always tried to be stoic around me, trying to teach me that I had to be strong at times, while also being caring. But I couldn't help but notice as I felt his tears trickle onto my shoulder and back. He pulled back and wiped his eyes. "Your mother and I love you, Henry, and remember, forgive them, for they know not what they do," he said, standing up again. "I will, and I love you guys too," I sobbed as the doors of the landing craft sealed shut. My grandpa put his hand on my shoulder and pulled me close. "Don't worry, we'll see them again," he said soothingly. All these years he still remembered. A part of him hated the Coalition races, but another part recognised that they were lied to, and the generations that came after were brainwashed into believing those lies. Still, he was surprised to learn that Captain Grinnak was once a patient of Lisa's. She had told him over lunch the day after they were captured. He already knew that one of the crew of the Runner had warned them of their attempted ambush, and after his interview with Grinnak, he suspected that he was the traitor. Either way, their fates would be decided once they reached New Sol. Dr. Jones took a bite of her scrambled eggs. To say that she was surprised to see a patient of hers all these years later would be an understatement. Still, she remembered the day he was brought into her ward. She was told that he managed to eject from his fighter, but his pod had a rough landing.
Alright, Devon, I need you to set his femur back into place. Then we can begin to fix that up. Janice, get started on cleaning that gash on his arm, then start closing it. Frank, get the anesthesia. He may be unconscious, but this will hurt, and we don't want him to wake up from the pain. Beth, prep his right leg, and we are going to need to remove that piece of shrapnel once the rest of his injuries are taken care of. I will take care of that gash on his head, I ordered. The others performed their tasks. Once I finished bandaging his head, I moved to help Devon finish the Goraxian's broken femur. Upon finishing that, I moved to help Beth while Devon helped Janice. Frank, having finished his job, moved to the next patient. Once we had finished and had him stabilised, we all moved on to other patients. Over the next few days, the other patients had been stabilised and awake, but he hadn't. But before I had to leave, I took a glance back at him to see that he was awake and confused. Ah, you're finally awake. I'm Dr. Lisa Jones. I wanted to ensure that you were awake before I left. You have been unconscious for about 5 days. At first, we weren't sure if you would wake up, I said before turning to leave. I was stopped, however, when he grabbed my arm lightly. Why? He croaked. I removed his grip gently while offering him a faint smile. Because of our rules of war and what we do, we know many of you are here under false pretenses, and we don't hold it against you, only your leaders, I said gently, before leaving. Once I closed the door to the war behind me, I stepped on board the transport and heard the door seal shut behind me. Lisa sighed through her nose. She didn't expect to see him again. Deep down, she hoped that he was the one who warned them. She didn't know why, but the thought of him potentially saving her life, just as she and her peers saved his, made her chest tighten in a way that she couldn't explain. She needed to talk to Whitkins soon. Maybe he would know.